Hello and a very warm welcome. My name is Udo Sendai-Dukai, and in this video I'm going to give you 5 tips on how to save space and get your project ready for an archive. Many thanks at this point to DJ and producer Italo Brutalo, who provided the idea for this video. Then let's get started. What this video is about. In between or when the project is finished, it makes sense to clean up and complete the project for space reasons, because of the backup and the archive. So I'm going to show you 5 helpful tips, or as it's called in YouTube-ish, 5 game changers that chills your producer existence to the next level and that I would have celebrated hard happy if I had known them 70 years earlier. By the way, please write me your favorite hard happy level booster change gamer tips in the comments, or why you are the most awesome entity in functional clothing, or show some warmth and write down the current room temperature. Raise the algorithm. These are the tips. The first one, clean up, delete unused audio files. If you work with audio files in your project and bounce here and there, the files that you no longer use are not always deleted automatically. It could happen that you have to go back a few steps and still need these files. However, you can always click on the paper icon at the bottom right at the project panel, then click on the Files tab at the top right, and finally click on Delete Unused at the bottom again. Bitwig could also minimize the ups and downs here. A window pops up and all the files that are no longer used in the project, meaning in the clip launcher or arranger, are listed here and selected. If you now click on OK, all these files will be deleted. It is simple as that. Second, clean up, deep dive, cleaning versions and delete undos. If you have saved different versions and variants in this directory, meaning something like Mindtrack version 1, Mindtrack version 2, Mindtrack version 2 final, Mindtrack version 2 final 2, and so on, you should check whether you really no longer need any of these versions and then delete them. In any case, you should then delete the auto backups directory in your track project directory, as there may be more bounce files referenced in it that can be deleted. Then run the deletion, delete unused again in your last loaded version. To summarize, if you really want to clean up, then proceed as follows. Delete all versions that you no longer need. Then delete the auto backup directory. Load your last version and rerun the delete unused process. You're done. Third, collect and save to track all external files into the project. If you have used samples from sample packs or from Bitwig or other sources via drag and drop in your project, then you should use the collect and save function. This function copies all the samples you use into your track project directory. This ensures that if you reinstall your computer or uninstall or delete external sample sources, the samples you used will still be saved in your track project directory. There's nothing more annoying than getting a track from the archive and its missing samples. Fourth, bit depth 16-bit, 24-bit, 32-bit floating point. Although we use it every day, there are still a lot of myths surrounding bit depth, which represents the dynamic range, meaning the volume levels. And since the bit depth has a significant influence on the file size and therefore on the archive and backup, the right decision can have a big impact. So, should I bounce with 16-bit, 24-bit or 32-bit floating point? It depends. I have already made a very detailed deep dive video into this topic, fixed point versus floating point, which you can find on my channel. The video is of course linked in the first comment. First of all, I'd like to make it clear that beginners get confused here and there. Dynamics is not a volume and also not loudness, meaning something like LUFS. The dynamic range only defines how many different volume levels can be reproduced or stored in the digital domain. As an example, if I only had a dynamic range of say 3, then I could still map the volume levels loud, mega loud and ultra loud. But with the same dynamic range, I could reproduce the following volumes: very quiet, quiet and loud. Meaning, depending on the volume range in which I set this dynamic range. So now an overview with a 0 dBFS or decibel full scale as a zero line. 16-bit fixed point has a dynamic range of -96 dB. That means 96 dB volume steps can be mapped. 16-bit is also the CD format or the currently still common consumer format in the streaming sector. 96 dB dynamic range is already a lot of volume steps. 24-bit fixed point, on the other hand, already has a dynamic range of -144 dBFS, meaning 144 volume steps. Just as a comparison, there's a volume restriction on stages to a maximum of 120 dB volume. Volume anywhere above 200 dBFS are deadly for humans. And with 32-bit floating point, the dynamic range is 1528 dBFS. Divided into plus 770 dBFS above zero and minus 758 dBFS below zero. 32-bit floating point makes a lot of sense for microphone recordings to avoid clipping with an unexpectedly loud signal. But even if 32-bit floating point can offer these theoretical values, this does not mean that the microphones are physically capable of reproducing the entire bandwidth with the materials and metals used. Nevertheless, they offer more security against clipping and distortion for suddenly occurring extremely loud signals that were not expected when leveling. So after this excursion and the new knowledge, let's ask the question again. Should I bounce with 16-bit, 24-bit or 32-bit floating point? For all bit depth, starting from the basic assumption that you have the corresponding track properly leveled and the track has enough headroom, you have prepared very good analog recordings or already leveled recordings host background noise, meaning the noise floor does not have a negative impact, something like sample libraries, or you produce all sounds completely in the box. Then there's no reason to bounce in the 32-bit floating point. Or let's say only in extremely exotic scenarios which probably don't really occur in normal music production. With 24-bit you are therefore on the safe side in 99.9% of the cases. However, modern music productions in the rock, pop, electronic or country music sector are already so reduced in their dynamics that even the 16-bit with a -96 dBFS volume steps seems like a waste. Normal dynamic range for modern music production is probably somewhere between 20 to -40 dBFS maximum. Be careful with classical music, film music and jazz, for example. These very often rely on large dynamic ranges. But if you want to try this out, please always test in individual cases. But testing could be very worthwhile if you want to bounce a sample, an Atmo or percussion, in quotation marks, only in CD quality. But every little bit helps, and the grab doesn't just affect the purchase of hard disks, but also backup times, archive sizes, file exchange and so on. If you watched the video up to this point, just write doing doing in the comments. 5. Flag 16-bit, 24-bit as a final file format. The last point is more of a request to DAW manufacturers who could make live backups and archives easier for their customers. Offer a storage option where all 16-bit and 24-bit samples are saved in FLAC file format by default. Depending on the project, FLAC files can save between 30 and 70% space. For a project of 1 GB, this could be saving of between 300 to 700 MB. With 500 such projects, that's between 150 GB and 350 GB. Maybe small for some, but still very easily avoidable for unnecessary storage space. So, before you go, leave me a comment and tell me what you think about bouncing and tidying up the projects. And of course, a joke about functional clothing. My name is Odo Sendai-Dukai, thank you for your time and attention, and I hope to see you soon again in the next video. Stay healthy, save the future, take care, see you then. Ciao ciao.